After the end of the war, a conference was held in Potsdam, Germany to set up peace treaties. The countries that fought with Hitler lost territory and had to pay reparations to the Allies. Germany and its capital, Berlin, were divided into four parts. The zones were to be controlled by Great Britain, the United States, France, and the Soviet Union. The three Western Allies and the Soviet Union disagreed on many things, and as time went on, Germany was then divided into two separate countries: East Germany, which had a communist government, and West Germany, which was a democratic state. Berlin was also divided into East and West Berlin. Many Berlin residents on that first morning found themselves suddenly cut off from friends or family members in the other half of the city. The Berlin Wall was one of the most powerful and iconic symbols of the Cold War. In June 1963, Kennedy gave his famous speech in front of the wall, celebrating the city as a symbol of freedom and democracy in its resistance to tyranny and oppression. The height of the wall was raised to 10 feet in 1970 in an effort to stop escape attempts, which at that time came almost daily. From 1961 to 1989, a total of 5,000 East Germans escaped. Many more tried and failed. High-profile shootings of some would-be defectors only intensified the Western world's hatred of the wall. Immediately after the war, Winston Churchill spoke of an Iron Curtain that had descended across Europe, behind which the Soviet Union was hiding. The Iron Curtain separated the capitalist West from the Soviet Communist East and became the front line in a new conflict, the Cold War. The entire country was buried under rubble, more than 400 million cubic meters of it alone in what would become West Germany. Additional damaged buildings had to be demolished, and still others were destroyed to make way for reconstruction. The initial work for reconstruction was done by the Trümmerfrauen, or rubble women. With so many men killed in the war, the Allies relied on women between the ages of 15 and 50 to do the hard work of cleanup. With such vast destruction, there was a severe shortage of apartments and living space in Germany immediately after the war. Many Germans had to live in emergency camps while others holed up in their largely destroyed homes. Due to bombing and warfare, many German cities were badly damaged at the end of the Second World War. Centuries-old libraries, schools, churches, theaters, and other buildings lie in ruin. German citizens had to grieve the deaths of millions and start rebuilding their lives in cities. 7 million prisoners and forced laborers left Germany, most of whom died either during their emigration of starvation, due to harsh conditions, or because they were worked to death. Over 10 million German-speaking refugees arrived in Germany from other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. After the war, many Nazi leaders were arrested and punished for what they had done in the war. The most famous war trials were held at Nuremberg, Germany. Those who were responsible for brutal crimes were sentenced to death. What the powers desired was an economically united Germany, rather than a divided one, because the country's economic recovery was essential for post-war Europe. However, the post-war development of Germany turned out to be different from the settlement of the Potsdam Conference. The powers failed to stick to what they had decided in the conference and began to pursue their own interests in their occupation zones. Different policies were carried out in the four zones, so economic unity and interzonal agreements had never been achieved. The most serious divergence existed in the U.S. zone and the Russian zone, and so as a result, problems developed between them. Besides the actions of the Allied governments, hyperinflation, depression, a food crisis, coal shortage, and massive unemployment plagued Germans into the 1950s and 60s. Loss of farmland in the former East Prussian province, plus the need to feed millions of refugees, contributed to a food crisis. Poor harvests also affected the food supply. In 1945, the total harvest of bread grain in the French zone was less than half of what it was in 1938. The amount harvested was enough to cover only half of the zone's food requirements. Malnutrition had a ripple effect on the economy. The less food provided for the population, the less hard labor individuals were capable of doing any work. As of August 1945, the American official ration for normal consumers was 1,550 calories per day. Although people did not always receive this amount because food was often unavailable, the German economy in the early 20th century had relied on coal for heating and fueling industry. Due to the damage to the railroads, coal was unable to be transported. Coal shortages as well as overall infrastructure destruction led to widespread unemployment. Altogether, the loss of the former eastern regions of Germany, combined with the wartime destruction of industry and transport infrastructure, effectively removed 4.7 million jobs from the German economy. That is about 15% of the positions in Germany when war was launched in 1939. The problem of reparations was the focus of the disagreement. For the Russians, the extraction of the greatest possible amount of reparations from Germany was their primary importance, so equipment was removed from the German factories and products were put to a halt. However, for the Western powers, the economic reconstruction of Germany was given priority. Finally, in the late 1980s, East Germany, fueled by the decline of the Soviet Union, began to implement a number of liberal reforms. On November 9, 1989, masses of East and West Germans alike gathered at the Berlin Wall and began to climb over and dismantle it. As this symbol of Cold War repression was destroyed, East and West Germany became one nation again, signing a formal treaty of unification on October 3, 1990.